It was probably one of the best years that I've had because I made the album Made in England, which I really enjoyed, and I made it in England, and that's why it's called Made in England. And also because The Lion King was probably a bigger success than anybody could have ever dreamed of, and that's why we haven't been able to put this album out until this March. It should really come out in October. But we just had to put it back because the album just went haywire in America, and with the film coming out later in Europe and the album now doing well in Europe, it was a nice position to be in. The only disadvantage about that is that you want the album to be fresh and you want it to come out, so you just have to put it in a drawer and not listen to it for a while. But '94 was, and I did a great tour with Billy Joel on the States, which was a lot of fun. I had a wonderful year, and this year looks to be even more exciting because, as a result of The Lion King, we've been nominated for Golden Globes and Grammys. So and then I'm going to promote this album, which is probably the most exciting album I think I've made for quite a long time. So life is good. I've done 3 or 4 albums with Chris Thomas, who I love working with, who's a big friend. I did Sleeping with the Past, Red Strikes Back, and The One. And I thought it was time for change, because I think after you work with someone for a while, you both need to go off in different directions. I'm not saying that I won't work with Chris again, because I did some Lion King stuff with Chris, but I just wanted to change the waters a little bit, and I decided to go with Greg Penny, who I'd known for the story about Greg Penny. He was a big fan of mine. He used to come to a lot of my shows in the early '70s in America. He's the son of Sue Thompson, who had all those records of Paper Tiger and James Norman, all those records. So, and then I didn't hear from him for a long time, and then suddenly I picked up a K.D. Lang album, and then he was K.D. Lang's producer, and then I got together with him with the K.D. Lang track on Duets and the Little Richard track, and I liked working with him, and I decided I'd give him a go, and it worked out really well. On the album it says produced by Greg Penny and Elton John. I think with the albums that I did with Chris, there was so much drum programming going on. And to be honest with you, when that happens, I tend to tune out and I sit on the couch and read the papers, and that can take a long time, and you can get a little lazy. And on this album, I definitely didn't get lazy. I was very hands-on in everything. I mean, all the guitar riffs that are on the record, more or less, are all I told Davey to play. I was involved with everything. The last few albums, I haven't been involved with everything. This time it was. This is a real Elton album all the way through, because every track has got me stamped right on it. Whereas before, I'll admit that some of the stuff I just left to the producers to do. I believe was the first track we did that I really liked. We wrote 20 songs for this album, and I must admit I was a bit of a nightmare during the whole album, because I decided that at 47 I could make those albums where I could just have a producer do quite a lot, and I take an interest in them, and I could do that for the rest of my life, but I wouldn't feel that good about it. And I thought, I'm 47, if I don't pay attention now, I won't really be very happy with myself artistically. So I was a bit of a nightmare the first 2 or 3 weeks. I was so unsure of myself and unsure of the way I was writing. Am I making the right moves here? Because I hadn't had that much control in my hands for a long time. That I then judged everything by the standard of Believe, and so consequently 20 songs got knocked down to 11. And at one point, there was only going to be 3 songs on the album. I used to come home and say, God, this is so awful. Nothing sounds as good as Believe. So, I mean, Believe was the benchmark for everything else on the album. And eventually, my insecurities started to subside and it gave way. But for me, that was the first track we put down, about the second or third track we put down. And I knew it was a really good song. I knew it was a good track. And then I knew I wanted orchestra on it. And so I thought of Buckmaster and got Buckmaster back involved, who did all the wonderful arrangements on the Elton John, Tumbleweed, Madman albums. And I said, listen, I want everything to be to the standard Believe, then I'll be very happy. We live in a very media-focused society where you tend to switch on the television or the radio and hear everything negative. Bad things, tragedies, disasters, murders, stuff like that. And it affects me. I mean, to be honest with you, I did the concerts at the Albert Hall at Christmas. I tend to think of this country from a media point of view and how negative it can be. And then I went and did the concerts, and I had so much love from the audience that I suddenly thought, Elton, you must think in terms of people, and put your faith in people rather than put your views on the media, and not let it sway you. I've made that mistake. I think there is a lot of love in this world and a lot of compassion. And it doesn't really get talked about as much as the negative side of things. So I'm trying to concentrate on feeling good about the good things in life instead of the bad things. The bad things infuriate me and can take over. But there's so much. I've had so much love and support during my rehabilitation, during my career from people. But then one bad thing happens, and I tend to think about the bad things rather than the good things. So I'm trying to concentrate on the positive things in life now. Those Albert Hall dates, I'm so glad I did them because of the feedback from the people outside before I went into the show. I tend to be a little wary in this country about how people see me, what my standing is. And those shows just reinforce that people have a lot of love for me, and I shouldn't focus on the negative things that I read in the press about myself, and that I should just concentrate on the affection people have for me. And it's hard, but it's what I'm going to do. And those shows just reinforce to me that, yeah, this is okay. This is people over here really do appreciate me, which is great. Well, I live here. It's like we've made albums in Denmark, we've made them in France, we made them in America, we made them in Canada, we've made them all over the place, Germany. I thought I haven't made an album really here since Red Strikes Back, which was just before, a year or so before I cleaned myself up. So I thought it would be nice to live here and go and record. And we found this wonderful studio in Hampstead, which is George Martin's new studio, which is an old church. Because I never write before I go in for an album. Bernie will come over with a certain amount of lyrics, but I won't write any melodies until I actually go into the studio. And it's very conducive to writing. It's beautiful because the sun comes through. It was quite a nice spring here. The sun was shining through the windows. All the pews were up. It was in the main room of the studio, so it was a very inspiring place to write. And I wanted to record back in England because I thought it was important. I travel so much. It's just nice to stay in one place. But on the whole, I mean, I love going to Scotland and I love going and playing Ireland. They have a fervour about them, and the Welsh too. I mean, you see the Welsh singing before a rugby match, which sometimes the English don't, and I find that a shame. So that's why I wanted to call the album Made in England. It was going to be called Believe, right to the last minute, and I thought that was a bit. I didn't feel it was quite right. It was at one point, and then I thought no. This album was made in England, it was written in England, it was conceived in England, I'm English, and I think it's a good title for the album. I live here, I'm proud of my country, it infuriates me, but you know, you go everywhere in the world and you go to places and people feel the same way about their own country, so you know, I'm proud to be English and I'm proud to be British, but I'm proud to be English and I'm proud that this album was made here. They vary. I love House, because it's just such a creepy kind of weird kind of lyric. Taupin is one of these lyricists that everyone has their own idea sometimes of what his songs are about, because you can't really say, well, it's about this, it's about that. I love that song very much, and I like the up-tempo tracks. I wanted to do the album with a band because I wanted to go out and be able to play it without drum machines, without all that sort of stuff. And so I like Pain, and I like England, and I like Lies. The best vocal on the album is on the track called Man, which is kind of the only track that we have a guest musician on, Paul Carrack, who played Hammond organ. But I think probably the sleeping hit of the album is probably a track called Blessed, which is the last track, which is about Bernie's wishes to have or hopes to have his own kid one day, which probably will happen sooner rather than later, as he's not getting any younger. I mean, he's been in 3 marriages now, and he's never had kids, and I think he's never really wanted kids until in his current marriage he has 2 stepdaughters, and he idolises them. And I just think he now realises that perhaps he and I have done so much work on ourselves, as far as I think he's now ready as an adult to have a child. I don't think he was before. It's a very selfish, self-obsessed business that we're in. I mean, when I was married, I'm glad that I didn't have a kid, because I wasn't in no position to raise a kid, physically, mentally, or spiritually. It's such a responsibility, and I think now he's ready to have that responsibility, and for the first time in his life he seems to be genuinely happy. I think we both come through very hard times, yes. Eric especially, personally. I mean, the death of a child, is probably even more devastating than being an alcoholic and a drug addict. You can recover from that. And the scars will finally heal. I don't know if the scars ever do heal from that. I can't speak from experience, but to lose your son, I think it's good that he was probably not taking drugs and drinking at the time, because he had something to fall back on in his fellowship and his recovery groups, and they were very loving and helpful to him and supportive. And I think it makes you strong. Once you find that kind of faith in yourself and you believe in yourself, then you can overcome those things, and life has to go on. I think if I hadn't have made that decision one day, God knows why I made it, but I did, to suddenly clean up my act, then I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. And I think I had to go through that adversity to actually find the person that I've always wanted to know about, because I had to, when I went into hospital, I had 6 weeks of intense writing about the history of the stuff that I used to do, history of my drugs and alcohol abuse, and basically find out and write down the truth and face the truth about myself, which I'd always been running away from. I think addiction basically is just running away from facing the truth. And with Eric's case and my case, I think that recovery from all that stuff has helped us grow up. I think it's just, again, say, maturing into being a person and being able to face the stuff that happens in your life instead of letting other people deal with it, dealing with stuff that happens. In Eric's case, he had to deal with far more than what I had to deal with. And look what's happened to him, because he's found a spiritual path that I think he's very happy to be on. Look what's happened to his career, and look what's happened to him as an adult and a mature man. You think of Eric Clapton, you look up to him and how he handled himself, how he looks, how he behaves. And I don't think that would not be possible if he was drinking and taking drugs. I'm accountable to myself now. I feel proud of I don't let people down. I don't let myself down, which is the most important thing. I'm proud of myself. It's not easy to get that self-esteem back, but it's gradually happening, and I'm very, very happy with my life. I've got nothing to be miserable about. I still get down in the dumps sometimes, but that happens, Before, I used to try and figure out why I'm down in the dumps. Why? It's probably because you've just taken 6 grams of cocaine over a period of like 12 hours or 14 hours, and you're coming down from it. That never occurred to me. I never addressed the real problems in my life. I always blamed it on something else. Never really got down to actually what was actually wrong with me. And now I do. If something goes wrong, I try and work it out, or I talk to people and discuss it, and don't hide myself away. And I think that helps me. And I've done a lot of work on myself. It's not been easy, but I've enjoyed it, because I'd rather be happy than go back into that hell that I used to live in before, and it was hell. When I was in rehab, you have to go to group and you have to be as honest. It's honesty. You have to just be honest as you can. And the level of honesty was quite astounding. And then when I came out, I went to a lot of meetings, and different groups of meetings, and rehab sort of meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, NA meetings, bulimic meetings, anything. I took a year off. When I came out of hospital, I decided for the first time in my life that I would live on my own. I've always lived with my family, or lived with somebody, or somebody who works for me, or there's always been someone in the house. I've never really been independent. I never had to do things for myself. I did that, and for a year, and I didn't do any work, which is again astounding, because the amount of product I put out, and I like to work. In fact, the only tangible thing I didn't destroy during my drug taking and my alcoholism was my work, and I tried my best to do that, but it was still there at the end of the day. And so I came out and I lived on my own for a year, and that was tremendous. I got to do things. And actually, you have to take time. You just can't come back after going through all that trauma of 6 weeks of cleansing yourself and getting all this stuff out, and then resume a normal life. Unfortunately, some people go to those places and they get thrust straight back into to normal life again. It's very difficult for them to cope. I took a year off. I had the luxury of being able to afford to take a year off. I did it, and that helped me tremendously. I met people that helped me. I got a lot of love and support from people, and I began to believe in myself, and believe that my actions as a human being were far more important than my actions as a musician or an entertainer. And I better get my priorities right, otherwise I was going to go down the same path again. I used to get up at 6 o'clock every morning, take the dog for a walk, go to a meeting, and my day was mine. But I worked hard, and I worked hard at doing the things I was told to do. I listened to people for a change instead of being Mr. You can't. I used to tell me things, and you'd go in one ear and out the other, because I thought, well, I know best. Well, obviously, I didn't know best, and people did try and help me when I was addicted to all that stuff, but I wouldn't listen to them, because I thought, I'm intelligent. I'll do it myself. I'll do it my way, and I couldn't do it. So I just listened to people, did what I was told, and as a result, I've learned a lot. I've learned a tremendous amount by just listening to what people have to say, and identifying with it, and just using that information. Some of the information you use, some of it you don't throw out, but you take the good stuff and you use it, and it helps you get better. Rod was 50 the other day. I sent him a Zimmer frame. It was actually, and one of those panic buttons, you see on the back of a magazine, where you have these old ladies falling down the stairs and they have this thing strapped to their wrist. So I sent him one of those too. You get to that age now. I was doing interviews the other day and I was reminiscing, and you get to the end and think, oh, you're at the reminiscing stage of your life now. I was thinking how much my life or my career wouldn't have meant to me if it hadn't have been for Rod. He's always been my antagonist in a friendly way. He's always had a record out at the same time as me. Yeah, we've always seemed to have been rivals, although we haven't been enemies. The stuff we've said about each other, which has been kind of nasty, has been said tongue in cheek. He was, without that kind of competition or that someone to spur you on, it wouldn't have been as much fun. And we have such a laugh when we see each other. That I kind of appreciate the fact that I grew up at the same time as him. We were making it at the same time, and it was very healthy to have that kind of, a bit like the Beatles and the Stones had when they came out. Rod and I happened at the same time, him probably a little bit before me, and it's been kind of, whenever he's got a record out, I always look to see where it's gone, and I've probably him the same when I've got one out. And we both had our peaks and our valleys, and we both survived it all, and I think it's been really good for both of us to have each other around. When you get us together, we're probably it's very funny. It's very, he's the best personality I can think of that I can bounce off of him as far as another artist goes. He's played terrible tricks on me, I've played terrible tricks on him. And I have a great fondness for him, especially as I get older. You think, God, it's great. I'm so fortunate to have had that kind of artist in my life. Even though at times I could have strangled him and him me. I have an AIDS Foundation here and in America, and both of them are doing very well as far as fundraising goes. Which, when you're involved in something like that, as I was involved with Watford, I'm very much hands-on involved. It's not just my name on it. There's not a day goes by without me phoning and asking what's going on. We've grown to such an extent in America in 2 years that we've given away nearly $5 million in 2 years, and we'll probably pass that, probably 3 or 4 this year. As you know, my single sales go to AIDS charities. It's something I enjoy. I am involved in it from a career point of view because I do a lot of fundraising for it. But on the other hand, we have a lot of meetings. We discuss what we're going to do, how other things are going to be, how can we raise money without me being involved. Like, they're going to sell glasses this year. We sell condoms. We sell greetings cards. So, like the football club used to do with me, it gives me another outlet to my life without having to think of myself. If I hadn't had the football club either in that time of my life, it gave me so much pleasure to do that, and it helped me. And there were no drugs ever involved in the football club. A lot of drinking, but no drugs. So that helped get me on the straight and narrow, and gave me something else rather than just be Elton John all the time. And with the AIDS Foundation, having placed myself in situations in my life sexually and chemically dependently with drugs, and coming through that unscathed, which is so lucky. Because you have one hit of cocaine and your immune system is rendered completely useless. So I've come back and I've decided that one of the things I must do is to give something back, because I've been given a second chance at my life again. And so we started the AIDS Foundation because I was doing so many other things for people who had AIDS foundations, and I wasn't sure what was happening to the money, who was spending what. So I thought, well, the only way to do that is to take charge of it yourself. And I think between 83 and 85% of what we raise gets to people who need it. And it's a direct care thing, people who are sick. We give some money to education, no money to research, but basically people who need food, hospital, counselling, whatever.